for you to add documents. One of the documents is authorization to furnish Stilla RESPA integrated disclosure, which gives the permission for everybody to talk to you about the transaction. So you have that signed by your customer, and then that, you can provide that to any of those as part of the proof that they said that you could talk to them about it. So
See, I run my business like a Ameriteam. There was a reason I came
Yeah.
to Ameriteam.
now I like the communication approach with this. So yes, this gives you, this tells people I have permission to talk to you. They gave me permission to talk to you about this, but it's this plus the communication
Yeah.
that actually makes it happen in a smooth order.
Because it'll get put on somebody's desk and you'll get underneath the stack like this. So I just always, and I'm a little bit tenacious in case you guys haven't noticed that.
All right, we're gonna go in live. You guys are good?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Well, actually, this is experimental. It's always been, right? So today we're gonna be covering the subject is about influence, and it's quite interesting because we have a lot of things that we could talk about, but this is actually a very meaty subject that allows all of us to grow into our business. And the reason why I'm doing this is because once I've learned this, my business took off. So this is how important this whole presentation I'm going to be doing today is all about. I don't know if we're live, but does it look like we're live?
I had it's got the register button, I registered, and then I didn't have any link to anything, so.
Oh, just go into the Mark Cabrera live. We should be live.
See, there's you in your suit.
Join live seminar.
Yeah,
That's
let's
how
go
to
ahead and
register again.
you have to register? Oh, that's
Yeah,
kind of cool.
it's telling me.
Oh, that's interesting. Never had that set up, but
And then
There.
before it just said, hey, Greg, you're registered, so let me see if it does anything different.
Fix your collar.
just take this off. Figured it out? It's not going live?
You're ready.
It just keeps telling me that, thanks for registration, that's it.
You have my channel, you said?
And then if you.
Oh, that's markcabrera.com. You gotta go into YouTube.
Mm.
Mark Cabrera YouTube. That's what it's a YouTube live. That's what it is.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Should
we
be.
don't have a link here, for them to go website. I have to-
Mark R. Cabrera, at Mark R. Cabrera, at R. Mark Cabrera.
Let's see if you just show up, so
There it is. We on? That's an old one, that's why. You gotta get into, just put at Mark R. Cabrera, there you go. Go in there. You might wanna subscribe, it's a good idea. Just go to live.
I don't know, man, I heard you, got VAs that start calling.
It's too funny. And there you are.
Aha!
Aha! Told you it was working somehow.
Alright.
All right, guys.
I'm gonna close this also so it doesn't interfere with your sound.
So welcome everyone. Thank you for coming here today. We're going to be presenting on the power of influence. And the reason why, going back into it again, the reason why I'm having this class or this session with you guys is because I wanted you guys to have an idea how it changed my way of doing business and how it changed my life. Just remember, whatever you're doing right now, if you're not selling a lot of houses and you pick up just one little bit more information, it actually takes you to the next level. And sometimes this little information could mean a lot in the most critical parts of your business. So it's very important to pay attention to the details that I'm going to actually cover for you today. So let's talk about the definition of influence first of all. Influence, the capacity to have an effect on the character development or behavior of someone or something, or the effect itself. Now, the reason why we're defining this is very important for us to define what we're trying to accomplish here is what is influence? Well, influence is for you to get, in a nutshell, to get someone to go your way. Now, there's two ways to go about doing that. You can do it by force, or you can do it by cooperation. So, when you're looking at by force, you've seen dictators able to actually run a whole country based on force or fear or things that affects individuals if they don't listen, right? That's by force. Now, that can work only when the leader is in front of those people. But the minute that they let off, even just for a tiny second, they're not looking. Those same people that they think that is being influenced will go the other way. Because it's not something that they were really wanting to do. So it's very important when you're dealing with clients, and I've heard this with agents before, they tell what the clients need to do. So there's a big difference there. Now, you gotta find out first from your client themselves, find out what makes them move, what motivates them. That makes a big difference in terms of how you're gonna be able to get them to go your way. So in an authoritarian approach, punishment is part of it, coercion is part of it, and involuntary, the people that are doing these things are involuntarily doing it. So to the degree that when we're selling houses or we're selling anything, right, you don't want to have any buyer's remorse or seller's remorse in that sense. And that's how you see transaction fail at the very last minute when the buyer decides, I don't want to buy anymore. Well, the buyer doesn't want to buy anymore because they feel like they didn't get the best situation for that particular purchase that they're doing. Or the seller decided not to sell anymore because they feel like they're being forced to sell and it's not really their own doing. So there's a fine line that you have to look at and be able to actually understand that there are things that you need to do with your clients that allows you to be more on the second part of this influence, which is by cooperation. So the problem a lot of people have, and all of us are guilty of this, is what we think, what everybody else are thinking is the same thing that we're thinking. So this is the whole idea that if all of us at some point in our lives think that we're a hammer, then everybody's a nail. In that kind of mentality. You gotta break off of that mindset and start shifting towards the idea that just because you're a hammer, there's gonna be other things that you can actually hit outside of a nail. So that means basically there's other ways for you to be able to look at perspective. And the best way to be able to do that is be able to see where that person's background is, where that person's upbringing, you know, where they come from, what they're thinking, how they're thinking, why they're thinking. All these things are very important and very crucial to create cooperation. If someone grew up in an environment where they're being pushed all the time to do things, right? The last thing they want is another agent to do the same thing to them, especially when they become an adult. It's like, you know, that's how you see teenagers rebel, is because they don't want to be in that kind of situation where they don't have a way for them to be able to so you do want it their way. You know, it's like a little Burger King advertisement, you know. Kudos to Burger King. You know, have it your way. I mean, one of the things that I've always taught my agents that I've worked with in the past is you always got to look at it from getting your clients to make the decision based on their own thinking or thought process.
Could you repeat that, please?
So getting your clients to make decisions based on their own thought process.
Okay.
okay? Because we, as agents, our job is to be able to accomplish the goals that they have from point A to point B. And the biggest problem that I've seen with some agents is they never even bother to ask why their client is looking for a home. They automatically assume they're looking for a home for whatever reason it is, and they don't really care. Well, in the influence by cooperation, you need to know why your clients are looking for a home to the detail of what drives them, whether it's actually like having a school district for their kids, or whether they want their scenario to be much better, where they live in terms of size of the home, or it could be a lot of different other factors, the neighborhood they want to be living in, that kind of stuff. So you need to really get to know them in a personal level. When people tell me business is business, well, guess what? You're in the wrong business, because business is personal in real estate. And the reason why it's personal is because it's hard for people to trust anyone, trust you in particular, to the biggest purchase that they'll ever get to make. Everybody agree that this is the biggest purchase you get to make, is buying your own home. I mean, it's bigger than the car. The car comes next. And of course, yachts actually come next, but you know, I mean, not everybody are buying yachts nowadays, right? Most of them either house and car, right? I mean, this is what you're looking at. So where you live is a very important aspect, that you need to be able to trust someone to be able to do this. So this is how important it is. So influence by cooperation, it's incremental cooperative approach. I don't know if you've heard of this before, but this is actually like slowly getting them accustomed to trying to go your direction. So the first time when a client actually writes an offer, I normally don't contradict them. I get them to fail. Why? Even if I give them my opinion, it won't matter. And the reason why it won't matter is because they're not planning on adopting me, right? I mean, that's why I usually tell my clients, you know, if my opinion ever counts one day, it's because I'm planning on moving in with you guys, okay? But we don't have plans like that. So therefore, my input to you is really giving you the information, but it's up to you what decision you want to make. And that's a very important facet of what we get to do, because looking at it from coming from their perspective, you won't, if you were them, you would want your agent not only to understand where you're coming from, but also to actually be able to understand the decisions you're making, that you want the best for yourself and your family. And sometimes the best for yourself for your family, and sometimes they fall off a cliff, but your job is to make sure the fall is cushioned, you know, they don't actually like kill themselves on the way down kind of thing, you know. You maybe send them with a parachute or something. But the point I'm trying to make is, I let them make their own decision. I let them fail a few times, and they make the correction on their own. Now, sometimes it's detrimental that they really want a house, and then they ask me, it's like, Mark, what will it take for me to get this house? And then I give them my opinion, and next thing you know, they're like, oh, no, I'm not going that way. It's like, okay. I mean, that's one thing I can tell you. I don't need to argue with my clients, okay? When you influence people, they need to go the direction without them feeling that you're actually the one dictating exactly how it's gonna go. So I always give them options. So I'll give you an example. So if I'm showing 4 properties in one particular house I want to actually be able to sell, let's say, because it looks like a much better fit for them, right? I show them the 4 houses. I show them the benefits of all houses. I show them the negatives of all the houses, right? But the one that I want them to go with, okay, I don't tell them, go with this house. I just give them more features in the house that I notice that why it's a really good fit for them. And it doesn't matter. It's usually the reason why I do this is for the best interest of my client. Always think for the best interest of your client. Why? Because your clients will refer business to you if they know that your interest is only for the best interest for them. Not for you or not anyone else, you know? So the point I'm trying to make is like looking at it from what you need to your clients to do, you need to incrementally get them there. And that's what I normally would do. I would actually slowly introduce them to the idea that they may need to put higher offers. Okay? And the crazy market we had like a year ago, it was exactly that. We had like 15 offers and one, you know, and for you to win that offer, I mean, I had a client that went $100,000 above the list price to get the offer with no appraisal contingency. And guess what? The property even appraised. Which, I mean, I've been in the business 30 years. I don't get to see this that often, but it does happen where properties that we think is not the value's not there, the value's there. As a matter of fact, I had recently a client that I helped them get a property, and we bumped up the price $10,000 because we needed all the closing cost help because the client had a very low score and the interest rate was actually really bad, so we had to buy down the rates. And if you guys are not aware, it's good to know that if the seller pays for the points on the buyer's interest rate, you can actually buy down more on the rates. I don't know if you guys are aware of that. So
If the
the buyer,
seller
yeah.
buys down the rate, you can also buy down the rate even more. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay.
So you can buy down the rate, and you'll have up to three points that you can buy down, or 3 discount points, right? But if you get your seller to contribute, they can buy down another 2 points. So your interest rate at 7.5 or whatever the rate is right now, it doesn't matter, right? It can go all the way down to like 2% less sometimes, or like 1.5%. It's good to know this, right? And it's something that actually helps when you're going through the process, when you know exactly what you need to do to get a buyer through a home. Because, you know, creative financing is something that I've actually learned over the years that opens up a whole different avenue where most agents are not able to tap into because they're not aware. But having that experience over the years, this is things, and believe it or not, that client that we had actually had a credit score below like 580 when they started with us, and we wrote the offer. We got it up to 570. We got it up to 580, and that was enough to do a manual
Just on the
underwrite.
mark, I was gonna say, just at the mark.
I tell you, it's a very rare instance you can push these things through, especially for manual underwriting. They're much tougher, right? But the point I'm trying to make is like, for them to move a certain direction, right? You need to guide them inch by inch through the process. You have a question?
This seller buy down and buyer buy down, does that also include like VA loans, first time home buyer?
Oh, those are completely.
Okay.
What I know of is something that we've done. I think it might have been conventional, but I mean,
Okay.
don't quote me on that. No, it was an FHA loan. Actually.
So
FHA.
So I would say take the idea
Take the idea.
and then
Yes.
approach the lenders that you use with that and say, is this true, or how can I make this work with yours? Oh, well, that'll only work with this or that.
Well,
Then you'll
like I
have
said,
a menu
whoever's
that you can pull from.
whoever's actually like listening to this is a very invaluable nugget, because
Yeah.
you'll approach certain clients with the whole idea that you can actually get more clients that are not normally would qualify, and then you get them to qualify. Yeah. So my wife does creative financing. My wife does financing on my side of things. I tell you, she's the most detail-oriented person in the world. That's why she does very well with it. But I'm the problem solver, so this is how all these things come up, and you can actually maneuver through it. But for you to be able to do that, of course, right, your client has to be 100% engaged with you, which means every single document that we needed on that manual underwrite came through because the client actually was able to rely on the information that we provided them, and everything was upfront. So all the information was, before you even look at houses, they already have a rundown what the monthly payment looks like. So each property that they look at, they actually like, hey, what's the monthly payment on this thing? And what are the options, kind of thing. What kind of down payment, what kind of closing costs, what kind of way of actually presenting the offer. So it's a little bit different, and influence comes in this part as well, because what you gotta present to your client is that not only that you're an expert, but you are the person that can solve their problems. As long as your client thinks that there's other people that can solve their problems, then you are competing. But the minute that you are the only expert that they're looking at because you know exactly how to actually get this thing done when you do the, when you do the offer, that kind of thing, they're gonna listen to you. It's much, much easier to have a client to listen to you because of this reason. Because they look at you as an expert, a market expert, so.
How do you approach the buyer if you are the listing agent talking to the lender?
How do you approach?
You ask for authorization to talk to the lender?
Well, no, actually, if you are actually an agent, right? A lot of the times you can pick give them choices of what lenders they can work with. Put it this way.
You are the listing agent.
You're the listing agent.
Yeah.
Well, if you're the listing agent, you're limited to what the buyer actually choose in terms of the kind of like, just 1 second here, the kind of like lender they would be working with. Because if the buyer's agent usually has more influence with their own buyer than you, but your influence with the agent
Yeah, I
itself.
was gonna say, but you can actually help them solve the problem.
Yeah, help them solve the problem through that process.
Because I was thinking if the seller is gonna buy the points for the buyer,
Uh-huh.
there should be almost all.
No, you just get them to sell a contribution.
Yeah, you're.
That's what it is. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I never let any seller know my buyer's financial situation, ever. How much they can get, because then that gives them the negotiating,
Right.
what's the word I'm looking for?
Leverage, yeah.
And leverage. And so if your buyer wants to offer something lower, and that seller finds out that they can get a loan for $100,000 more, then that seller is not going to accept that offer. So everything as far as that, or me personally, the world according to BJ, I keep all of that very close. I don't share that information. I tell them this is what's going on, is she willing to do, what are the questions they have? And then you go back to your buyer and you talk to them about it, and if they have, I advise my buyers, and I tell them this is what's happening and this is what can happen in this scenario. And then they make a decision, and then but I never let a listing agent know anything about finances at all.
As much as possible, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
Within reason.
yeah, you have to let them know certain
That they're
things.
qualified for a
But,
mortgage.
Yeah, I mean, here's the letter qualification,
Yeah,
and.
that's
you
to that
know,
extent.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, in the olden days, we have to get a financial information sheet put out there. Nowadays, you don't need to, but, it's a different world.
Yeah.
But to looking at it from how you get cooperation is very important. And that leads us to the next seminar, because negotiation requires influence, right?
Yes.
But the negotiation deals with more of a give and take. And the general rule is you give a little, you take a lot. And as long as the other party feels like they're getting as much, then it doesn't really matter, it's perception. The perception of that's what it's all about on the negotiation side. But another thing that you would do in regards to being able to influence. See, influence is generally a push and pull of motivation. And motivation, like I told you from last time, is derived from pain or pleasure, right? So in order for you to be able to influence people, the other part of it is getting them the feeling of accomplishment or reward. So as you go through the process, allowing them to feel like they're going somewhere. So making them feel more hopeful as you go through the process, especially when you're having a hard time finding a house because there's hardly any listings available. You got to keep them engaged in terms of being hopeful that they're going to find a house, because eventually they may just walk away and decide not to buy, and here you are spending all your time trying to get them to move forward, and they're not going anywhere. So it's very important for you to understand the importance of that dynamic of being able to push and pull the motivation side of it. And one way is actually being able to show them exactly, like the light at the end of the tunnel. I usually like to tell stories about what's happened with my past clients, which I have a lot of past client story. But if you don't have a lot of past client story, then you borrow somebody else's past client story. That's basically what it boils down to. So people tell me like all the time, like, oh, because you've been in the business for a long time. Well, guess what? If you partnered with me and I'm your coach, all of a sudden you got my 30 years of experience backing up your whole company.
Yep.
At that point. I mean, that's a huge benefit, right? I mean, imagine somebody that can guide you, and people don't realize the value of coaching, because if you think about the best, like over the weekend, this weekend, there was like the heavyweight boxing championship actually happened, right? It's like, apparently it's historical, that I don't know how many people follow boxing nowadays. But as big as that is, all those boxers have coaches. Do you agree?
Yeah,
Well,
it
what
should.
makes real estate agents and brokers not have coaches? It's the same idea. Because coaching, the coach can allow you to actually redirect your energy in the right places. And that allows you to multiply your production level. Go ahead.
I asked my last listing I sold, I asked the buyer agent, how many houses did you show your client? She said 50.
There you go.
50.
Yeah.
I told him,
That's no joke.
Are you crazy?
No, it's
So
not
every
crazy.
time we go, they say, oh, they don't like it. You know, this is the thing is, this is when you say as is. Anything can happen. You see
Yeah.
walls punched, you can see roaches, you can see all
Yeah.
sorts of things. And she said 50.
50, yeah.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. This is how difficult this business has gotten, believe it or not. There's a lot of agents out there that are not producing. And the reason why they're not producing is because they don't know how to direct their clients to be able to actually show less and show quality of the properties. See, if they're seeing roaches, it's because you didn't do your homework. You see? If you've done your homework and you know the client, right? You already have an idea what houses would actually work with your client and what houses won't. And if you don't, then you gotta go out there and look at the inventory before you even go out there and show your clients.
This is a key point.
Yeah,
Yes.
because you more than likely have more than one client to work with to begin with.
Maybe you have to go by yourself.
Yeah, you
I
could.
do that. I go before, if I'm not familiar with the property, I go before I show my customer, my
Mhm.
client.
Yeah, that makes
I go
sense.
before just so that I know, or I can at least give the impression that I actually know the property.
Yeah, well, it's like I said, perception is reality.
Perception is reality.
Yeah, because if you don't know how to create that perception, that you know the market, which you should know the market to begin with before. So for you to be able to show 50 houses is because you didn't train your client to go through the process. So one of the processes that worked for me over the past many years, one of the processes that I do is I sit down with my client, nowadays over Zoom, right? And search the property together. And then as we search the property together, they'll tell me their likes and dislikes, what works, what areas they want to check into, what areas they don't want to check into. So I don't send them properties that they themselves searched with me. That's very important because I want their input live. And it's very useful for that Zoom meetings that I have to be able to actually sit down there and show them my screen and actually go through it. So do you like this? They like this, you know? Would you like fries with that or burger? I mean, like, you want supersize it? I mean, like, yeah. I mean, if you think about it, why McDonald's is so successful is because they have this method, right? It's the same thing. If you learn the method of being able to influence your client to go a certain direction, and they're the one driving the steering wheel, even though you're the one who's actually like directing the road. So you're managing the road, but they're the one driving. They feel like, oh, I'm in control. But you're the one who actually predestined exactly where they're going to begin with.
So you narrow down the choices to how many?
They narrow down the choices
Yeah.
to 6 to 8 properties. there's a psychological process to remembering things. And usually I tell my clients, when you go more than 8 properties at a time, you'll start mixing up where the kitchen is and where the bathroom is from what property, and the basement, which one had the basement, which one didn't, which property had the tile roof or which one had the asphalt roof. You won't even know, because after 7, 8 properties is too much already. So for you to get to the 50, what that person did essentially, instead of doing the search together online first and narrowing it down to the top 6 or 8 properties, see, if you search it together, you can narrow it down to 6 to 8 properties. You know why? Because you tell them. You tell them, hey, let me show you the process. We're going to search it together, and then you pick the top 6 to 8 properties we're going to look at this weekend. You see how that works?
Mhm.
You predestine exactly how you want the process to be, not your client. If your client actually has their way, oh, I want to see that house. After seeing this, I want to see that house over there. I just saw the sign over there. It's not even in their price range. It's not even in the number of bedrooms they want. It's not even the size of the property they want. Why? Who's dictating it? They are. They're influencing you rather than the other way around, right?
What was the psychology behind that?
The psychology behind
What you just said, you said there's a psychological term for, and I missed the last
Okay,
part.
the psychology behind the process, you control.
Oh, okay,
You control, not they control.
right.
You see the difference? When you're new in this business, the client controls you because you have no clue what you're doing. But if you get enough coaching, right, you control the client and you maximize your time. And every hour of our time, believe it or not, is important. How millionaires become millionaires, how billionaires become billionaires, it's the use of the time that they've actually done for a particular task that generated that income.
And how do you generate the control? Will you take them in your car instead of theirs?
No, I would actually search it together at the office on the computer. You start there. Let them actually, and then you dictate to them, hey, our goal is to pick the 6 to 8 properties. And then you put the psychology behind this is because you will not remember after 8 properties which one has which kitchen and which bathroom has the bathroom, how many bedrooms one house has versus the other. I think that's the psychology
Yes.
we're asking.
Yes.
That's the psychology behind it, because after 7 and 8 properties, statistically speaking, most people forget which kitchen belonged to what house.
And there's only so many floor plans. I mean,
Yeah.
there's only so many.
Yeah, but then you start getting confused. Was that house over there or was that house over
Right.
here? You know, because they look the same, right? So having a way of explaining to them why you're only gonna look at 6 to 8 properties, and they pick from there if they find it. And if they don't find it, then we look at the next set of 6 to 8 properties. And the first set, usually you will already knock it out. That's why I hardly ever show 50 houses. The only time I've actually shown, not 50 houses, it's 130 houses in 4 days.
Wow.
I spent 4 days with that client. And the reason why is because they were referred, and they only had 4 days to come here, coming from Germany. So they wanted to see every single possible purchase that they would want to make. And I told them, hey, listen, I'll take my 4 days off and spend it with you guys. And I drove around with them. So we became really close friends. Later on, they referred me their son. Later on, the son actually already referred me their daughter. I mean, like 3 generations.
Right.
That's how I'm feeling old at this point. I'm going from grandmother to grandfather to father to daughter. I mean, you know, that whole lineage. And the reason why is because my purpose was different at that point. My purpose was to get to know them more than actually showing houses. But that's the only time I did that, which paid off dearly for me, at least at this point. So feeling of loss or hopelessness, this is the opposite. That's the pain part, right? When somebody is actually feeling hopeless, right? And you're the one who make them feel hopeful, then your influence is much greater for that scenario. I had a client recently that had that situation. They were feeling hopeless. They had a son that actually ended up not having a place to stay, and he's been going from hotel to hotel, and they're feeling hopeless. Well, motivation's there. And I help them actually get a house like this because the motivation's there. So they ended up paying a little bit more, but they insured the house and they were able to actually go to closing. So yeah, consistency and commitment approach. This is actually very, very good to know. Successful people have these particular characteristic. They're consistent and they're committed. And when people know that you're consistent and you're committed to them, that you're actually doing everything that you can possibly do for them, they're not going anywhere. If they don't feel that way, then you're just a commodity at that point. Remember one thing, if you ever lose clients to another agent, it's not the agent's fault, it's yours. Own it. Okay? You can make all the excuses in the world, oh, because that person has more experience. Well, you know what? You can gain a lot of experience through those mistakes, but it's better to have somebody else's mistakes and you learn from them. It's much, much easier, you know? Instead of suffering through the process of actually trying to figure out everything, somebody already's figured it out. I mean, it's like somebody already invented the wheel. I mean, all you gotta do is roll with it, you know? And I'm a very, I guess, I really believe in that there's so many things that's been created already. And I'm a very creative person. But I rather actually duplicate successes out there, especially in this field, rather than like look at it and say, look, let me create something new. There's really, I mean, the only new things that I've actually seen, and like this morning, my wife and I were talking, and we're like sitting, and I told her, it's like, you know what it takes to grow your company, I mean, in the real estate field? And she's like, what is it? What it takes is like that laser focus of being able to reach out to as many people as you can and receiving calls. Because putting out calls is much more difficult because everybody's getting bombarded. I mean, all of you guys, I'm sure, have gotten scam calls, have gotten telemarketing calls, like there's no tomorrow, right? So it's like just reaching out to somebody, if they don't know you, is already like it's already a bigger hurdle than it used to be 10, 15, 20 years ago. Because people don't even want to pick up the phone because you're getting calls every minute, like from telemarketers, scammers, or like, I mean, I even hear like pre-recorded stuff or AI calling you kind of thing. Like, this is insane. It's using up every single minute of your time every time you pick up the phone, right? But what if, and this is what I told them, what if you're able to receive those calls? Number one, that person has a need. Number two, if you get live, you more than likely can close it a lot easier because they're the one who's called you, not you calling them. How do you generate that? That's the other question. And hence, this influence thing actually makes a big difference. The way we are able to reach out to people through our marketing is several things. One of them is through reciprocity. If you bring something of benefit to somebody, somebody would want to actually give it back to you. Have you ever gotten like a flyer sometimes or something, they give you like some kind of a gift and then they're asking for donations?
Yeah, 5 cents.
Whatever it is. Whatever it is, right? If it's a good enough cause, you'll end up actually paying it. Do you agree or no? If it's something that you believe in, you'll end up paying it. Why? Because somebody gave you something of value you don't even need, right? And you feel like you want to give back because this is something you believe in. And if it's something that you believe in, hey, you know, let me give back. So this is the kind of stuff that we're talking about, right? The reciprocity approach. And that in itself is a big influence in terms of how you do your marketing. What's been very successful for me for over the years is I hold events. Every quarter, I hold events. And I'm talking about personal events that make it, and I invite my clients. Because they're personal, my clients, like I told you, it's not business as usual. It's business as personal. So the ones who attend is because they care about me, I care about them, and we're not talking about houses at this point. But they know I'm in the business of real estate. And the more closer I get to them in a personal level, the more likely they will refer business to me. Because I've become their friend. I'm not just their realtor, I'm their friend. So what do you do with your friends? You support your friends, right? At least I hope so. And the ones who don't support you, I mean, are they really good friends? You gotta ask yourself that. Right? So the whole idea here is be able to create that reciprocity. So I hold events to create that reciprocity. The more I invite them closer to the date. Why? Because if they all showed up, basically I won't have enough space, I won't have enough food, I won't have enough fun, right? But it's in the invite that makes a difference because you thought about them. People don't realize, have you ever, I don't know if you've ever had, I had a loan officer that used to call me like last minute, says, hey, I got baseball tickets, do you want to go? But I'm talking about last minute, like on the same day. And they're calling all the agents. And the agents feel like, oh my gosh, look at this person thought about me. And sometimes you'll say yes because you have the time. But usually they have like 3 pairs or 4 pairs of those tickets. And what they do is they make the calls. And most people cannot make it. But it's the fact that you thought about them that mattered. So the next time that the agent thinks about a loan officer, they look like, oh, look at this loan officer. This loan officer is very kind to me. Let me go ahead and try to send him business this way. So it makes a huge difference when you're looking at that, how you get the business. So that's one way. There's many ways to do this. You can go to nonprofit organization events, have a booth, and give away stuff. Go ahead.
I got the listing from somebody, and I told her, oh, I'm going, after we closed and everything, we talked, and she said, oh, I said, well, what are you going to do? I said, oh, I'm going to go to Turkey for some few days. And I said, oh, you can buy me earrings.
There you go. And did you?
So,
That's the other question. It's very upfront.
And how
And guess
much
what?
I spend?
No, don't ask that question. The only thing she said is buy me earrings, right?
yeah.
Earrings can be as cheap as $2, I'm sure, in Turkey, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be, it's the thought that counts. And some people don't get enough attention, that's why they bring it up to your attention. Don't feel,
Hollywood style earrings,
yeah, but don't feel that they are actually imposing. That's actually, it's like how my mom actually does things sometimes. You're like, like, oh, you had a commission, okay, great. Well, you should be paying for my da-da-da-da-da. I'm like, okay, Mom. I mean, I'm paying for a lot of stuff already. No, but the point is, you have to understand, everybody has their own approach, right?
Yeah.
That approach allows you to actually have an avenue that you can turn that friendship into a closer relationship, and that could turn into a referral business. That's very important to understand. It's not always, people do not always present themselves eloquently,
Yeah.
but you have to understand that there's a meaning behind that because they want to have that interaction with you. And that's a good thing, because if they didn't really care you went to Turkey or you going to Turkey, I'm like, okay. Well, right? So why learn to influence? Well, selling more houses is one reason why, right? I mean, if you want to be able to sell more houses, whether you're dealing with a buyer or the seller, being able to kind of maneuver this in the most effective way allows you to have more time for yourself in an efficient way. See, our business is so amazing because sometimes we spend 1 hour or 5 hours at the most with a client and we can make thousands of dollars. Do you agree?
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes you spend thousands of hours and you get nothing, right? But the point is, if you can figure out exactly how to create that happy medium where you're maximizing your time to the best people that you can possibly have, then you'll have more income in this business. So it's what you do with every client that matters. So to me, the way I look at it, if a client has motivation, is a very high priority for me to take care of clients that have high motivation. A client that has low motivation but high resources doesn't really mean as much, because there's a lot of people out there that actually just want to flaunt their resources and say that they could do this, but they don't, right? So we can help more people, change our lifestyle. Changing our lifestyle, this is another thing. I'm a firm believer that whatever you put in your mind can be done. And the reason why is because my first year in the real estate business, I set a goal to make $60,000. And my first year I got nothing. My second year got nothing. I mean, I'm talking about nothing, like every year between my expenses and my income was zero or negative. On my fourth year, I had a mentor, a coach. Essentially, I created that relationship with that coach. I saw this guy who was number one in the office. He was making $250,000 a year at the time in the 90s, late 90s, like 97, 98. And I said to myself, wait a minute, this is the guy I need to hang out with. And this is how important it is. People don't realize it will take you 20 years to learn the same amount of things that you could learn with somebody who's been in the business for a long time, and be able to be around them long enough to teach you the business in 1 year or 2 years. So on my first year working with this person, working side by side with him, right? I learned what influence was all about. I've learned exactly how he's pushing and pulling motivation. He's getting people to go with him, and people flock to him. This is how you know someone is very influential, is when people flock to them. He doesn't look for the business comes to him. And the reason why business comes to him is because he's shown enough goodwill out there to every person that he works with, that these people feels indebted to him when the transaction is done. And one of the ways to do that, and it's very, very good to know, is you under-promise, over-perform. You've heard this before, right?
Yeah.
So I've actually told my client, you know what? Let me see if I can get you, since it's my wife, I can get you a $1,000 lender credit, let's say, right? Hypothetically. Remember, everything I'm telling you is hypothetical, okay? Never happened. No, I'm just kidding. and then closer to the settlement, right? What I noticed, my wife and I already talked about, that our plan was to give that person $2,000. But yet my wife told me, like, how come you're not telling him? I'm like, wait till the end. Because when the end comes, when everything's being delivered, and they get an extra $1,000 on top of something that we could have given them in the beginning, they'll be so ecstatic about the service we provided, that they got the best rate, they got the best house, they got everything. Monthly payment wise is what they're looking for. They knew exactly what they were getting themselves into. They know exactly what the monthly payment looks like, and it's less, right? When settlement's all said and done, client's happy. Not only they're happy, they even ask me, like, where do I actually send me your link to your reviews, blah, 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 blah. When people actually ask you that, it's because they feel indebted to you. Why? Because you've done something good. And the reason why you've done something good is because you presented it that way. If you don't know how to present yourself in terms of what you're doing good, then it gets shoved aside. This is marketing 101, and this is influence, right? This is all about how you influence people this way. So, create success in your life. Why would we want to influence, right? Create success in the business life. To me, our influence is not limited to just our work. I believe that how we raise our children is very, very important, and what influences we have that we've given them. The way you know you've raised decent children is when they are productive members of society. That's how you know. Okay? If they're not productive members in society, then basically something went south. And unfortunately, your influence wasn't strong enough for them to be able to stick to where you wanted them to go. My goal was basic. I want them to choose their career, okay? I want them to choose their path. I want them to actually go the directions that they want to go. The only thing I ask is whatever you do your best. That's the influence of what I saw as a father for me to be able to instill to my children. Is be able to get them to realize that they can get anything they want in the world. They can get anything they want in the world. But they have to want it bad enough to get it. So this is basically a very important part of how we kind of use the influences that we have. Our children's, to me, I think, you know, if you guys have kids or not, then, you know, it's hard to relate, but for me, the way I look at it, to be a good parent is to be a good influencer to your children. Not necessarily they'll follow your path, because most of the time they don't. But the core values that you're looking for is the most important part. And the same goes with the people you work with. So when you're building a team, like you were mentioning, you're building a team, right? Your agents have to look at you and say, this is a good role model. This is the person I want to follow because this person knows how to do things correctly. It means you have certain qualities and core values that people would want to be around you. People would want to be, you know, going through the process with you. So the best team leaders are the best servants to their team in that sense.
Yeah.
Because you have to understand that these people have less resources than you because you have more experience than them, and they have to feel that you're with them every step of the way. So yeah, so the way that we look at influence when we're looking at it from our business, it's not just from the client standpoint. The client standpoint gives us the production, what we need, right? But from the peripheral standpoint is where you make the real money. Because if you have people working with you, side by side with you, and they're doing their own production, and you get them to be productive as well, that's how you see these teams grow into like mega teams. Like their production numbers are huge. Well, because they were able to duplicate that process. The leader is very influential to how the followers are actually doing their work. Make sense? Yeah.
Actually, I look at it in another way. Is you stand in front of your car, and immediately you push it, you click, you just touch the door, especially like Lexus.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And the door opens right there, because you have a smart key in your pocket, and you don't have to use it, but you have it in your pocket, and you just touch the thing, and everything opens. And if you have a customer that you already built this so good relationship, like the Germans, they already know what you can do for them, so they don't want to spend money or energy to work for somebody else, and they come to you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, so lead people to success, build an organization to be productive in society. This is, to me, the definition of raising children for me, is having them become a productive members of society in that sense. How's that look? Well, they work, they have whatever, family, or, you know, whatever they chose in terms of their path. But, you know, they're not in jail, or like, you know, they're not causing trouble, or like blowing up things, you know, because, you know, when we're kids, we could get away with those things. When we become adults, we become terrorists. Sometimes we call our kids terrorists because they really blow up things and set things on fire just to see what it looks like when it melts, right? I mean, I've had all sorts of things happen. I have 6 children, so can you imagine? I mean, you know, it ranges from he's 1-year-old and all the way to 25, you know? So it's a very interesting scenario. So here, buying a house, reason to buy a house, easy process or difficult, sense of urgency, why you? These are the things that you would ask. Why, and this is how you're going to be able to influence your buyers. It's the why behind everything. So looking at it from people telling you, oh, well, because we decided we want to buy a house. Well, if that's the only reason, it's not strong enough. There's gotta be an underlying thing, like maybe the space where they're living in is not big enough anymore. Or maybe they're paying too much in rent that they want to actually save more money, for their future or their retirement, or whatever it is, whatever their goals are. But you gotta get deeper. That's the whole idea behind this. And sense of urgency. This is another thing. It's so much easier for you to influence people to buy homes or even sell their houses if there is a sense of urgency somewhere. And if there is none, then you need to learn how to create one. This is sales 101 in that sense. So if there is none, you have to be able to figure out how to create one. Something real, not like something made up. Something based on what they're telling you. Does that make sense? Even my wife was telling me this morning, she's like, Mark, it's hard to copy you because you come up with things where people actually start to think about things, and next thing you know, it grows into something that they really want to do something about buying a house. Not a lot of agents can do that. Well, the reason why not a lot of agents could do that is because they haven't really developed themselves to the level where they can. Hence, when I'm coaching, I usually give personal development side by side with it, and the application of the personal development to go along with what they're doing in the real estate side. So your skills are not obtained based on how well you write a contract. Your skills are attained, and your ability to be productive and make a lot of income in this business is based on your own development of self. Because what do you sell? Not houses. I promise you, you don't sell houses. That's the reason why there's Zillow nowadays, trying to get us out of business. You got Realtor.com that they can go directly to try to pick up listings. And we're having to try to figure out what's going to happen with the buyer's agency side, right? You guys agree on this stuff? Okay, well, because you're not selling houses. You're selling the value of you to the next person. And the person of actually looking at it from the trust factor. How well does that person can trust you? Are you confident enough to show them exactly what it takes? It's very important for you to come across confident to anybody that you're dealing with. Because if you're not, it's much, much harder to actually sell a house to anyone. So being able to create that personal development is a crucial part of what I've seen, how my business grew. See, my business, people tell me oh, because you've been in the business a long time. No, it's because I've read probably hundreds of books by now. And I'm still reading books. Like on the way here, I was actually already read 2 books actually on the way here. And trying to actually see exactly how I can apply it to my business. So it's very important for you to be able to see that and how it can be applied. And the more you do that, I promise you, your business is not based on you knowing so much about houses. It's about you being able to be trustworthy and likable. There's people out there that has all the skills in the world, but they're like jerks, like horrible people to be around. And people don't want to be around those people. People want to be around positive, pleasant people, right? But it's sometimes so hard to be pleasant when you have all these problems to go along with, right? All of us have our own set of problems. And that's another thing, what people don't realize, how important it is that whatever problem you have to be able to compartmentalize. When I was going through my divorce, right, and I was still doing real estate, I was still selling, right? But I had to actually completely separate myself from the pain and suffering and sorrow and depression and all that stuff, and actually go in and gung-ho and make it happen for the people. Why? Because people rely on me. Who would want to rely on you when you're depressed? Seriously. Depressed people are the most unreliable people out there in the world. I don't know if you've actually noticed that, because they don't want to do anything. That's why they're depressed. You want to get out of depression? Do something for someone else. I promise you. You'll get out of depression so quick because you'll realize that you're in better situation than the next person that you're helping. You might be depressed because you're going through whatever, right? Like let's say you're going through divorce. But the next person you might see is the fact that not only they went through their divorce, they're missing a leg and they're actually in the street and have this mental, psychological issue, and the only person that can help happens to be you. And if you did something like that, I guarantee you'll actually feel better. There's a book, Man's Search for Meaning, by Viktor Frankl. Have you heard of this book?
What's the name of it?
Man's Search for Meaning?
I haven't read that one. I know the author.
Okay, so Viktor Frankl wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning, okay? If you ever come across someone depressed, have them read this book. You'll save their life. And the reason why is because that is all about the Holocaust and what he had to go through and what his family had to go through and how he lost his wife. Maybe not, but I think he lost his wife, and how he lost his colleagues, how lost his friends, lost his immediate family members in like this. And he's a psychiatrist. He was already a doctor, psychiatrist to begin with. And he analyzed what the logo means. So the way he was able to make it through the whole Holocaust is finding meaning in everything that he was doing. So no matter what happened around him, right, he found meaning inside him that no one can take away. So for me, when we're too self-reflective of all the things that are happening in our lives, right, believe it or not, it doesn't cost anything to be a friend to someone. That's how influential we can be in the kind of business that we're in. When you save somebody's life or mindset and get them to be more positive or get them to actually pursue things more diligently and happier in their lives kind of thing, right? And you're actually the one who did that, people would want to refer business to you, naturally. You don't even have to look for the business. And over the years, this is what I've been doing. I've been a counselor, I mean, you name it, a friend, anything and anybody that ever need anything, I'm there for them. I'm not just doing real estate. And that's a very important thing to understand because our business is personal and that's how you're able to influence. So why sellers would list with you? Well, they trust you. They know you already. They know the people you know. They know the company you work at. They feel you present yourself well as an expert and you are honest and trustworthy. What is all that? That's all personal development. Outside of your company, of course. Your company will actually have its own staffs, right? That's the only thing that you actually need to look at outside of everything else. Everything else is personal development, if you think about it. Right? When they like you, they have common interests with you. By the way, influencing someone, finding common interests is very important. Because that's how you're able to connect with people much better. That's one of the things. And sometimes when you're making cold calls, that's the only chance you really have is a very short period of time, within 5 seconds or 10 seconds, to connect with that person in some way that there's something that will allow them to stay on the phone with you. Because there's so many calls that are out there. You know, it's not easy to, go through picking up your calls all the time, coming from people who's needing something from you all the time, it's like, so, they like your personality. What is that? Personal development again. Staying positive. When you present yourself to every person that you meet, do you look positive? You ask yourself that. Sometimes you gotta look at yourself in the mirror. If you're frowning, start working on that first. I mean, I've seen people actually in this business, I swear I don't even know how they sell houses, and they don't sell houses because their faces is so depressing. Their faces are like sad.
Or they look mad.
Or like they're angry about the world. I mean, believe me, it's very important for you to understand that people attract to you because of positive energy. Positive energy brings people around you. It's natural. And my wife actually always tells me, like, wow, you got this personality. No. Man, I've been reading enough books for me to get this personality. I'm not like, I wasn't born like this. I mean, if I was reading the negative books, probably I'll be negative, but I'm looking at all the positive books and how to develop myself to be a better person, right? How do you interact? How do you understand people? By the way, for you to be able to be influential, you have to understand the person that you're influencing to begin with. What is really behind the scenes? And and as I've been going through thousands of people in the business that we've done, actually I've sold over 1,000 houses at this point between my former boss I work with and like almost 500 properties myself. What I've realized, all these people that I've met, there's a pattern. Human beings we have natural patterns. And if you pick up on those patterns and you understand those patterns, oh my gosh, I'm telling you, your whole world changes. Because all of a sudden, when someone's yelling and screaming, and you know where they're coming from, you don't have to react. You don't have to be that same person. It's like, I look at people, and I think I mentioned this to you guys before, I look at people in like age groups of maturity, right? So if a person is actually behaving like a 7-year-old, I'm not gonna behave like a 7-year-old. I'm gonna be the adult in the room to actually point out exactly how a 7-year-old gets treated. And guess what? They love it. They love to be acknowledged, like, oh, I'm a 7-year-old, but without telling them that you're treating them like a 7-year-old. You're talking to them like a 7-year-old, but that's what they want. Hey, if that floats your boat and keeps you off of me, I'm perfectly happy. You know, but imagine how influential you can be when you're able to maneuver, like move like water from one personality type to the next.
Okay, Bruce Lee.
Exactly. Is it water? No. Sting like a bee or something?
No.
Float like a butterfly? Or something.
Bruce Lee is the one that says to be like water.
Yeah, and it's very important for you to be able to maneuver that because your clientele is endless at that point. There's clients that I work with that nobody even want to work with, and I love it. I mean, no competition. I have this client that bought $1.6 million house with me, and my wife's like, is he really gonna buy a house? I'm like, oh, just be patient. And to this day, he still calls me today like, hey Mark, I just redid the pool and blah, blah, blah. You know, I'll send you some pictures. You know, I'm like his dad that he never had, you know? I mean, that's how and one of the people that I assigned to him as a buyer's agent actually quit the business completely. Couldn't deal with the guy. I mean, and then one loan officer quit with us, never want to work with us again because of this one person. 2 people quit on the same year. It took him a year to buy a house. But when he bought a house, he bought a house. And if you ever interview this guy, the other guy that I actually assigned, he didn't quit. But he understood a lot better because he's been with me longer. So he understood exactly like what I was teaching him, like, you know, like I said, like move like water, right? So he understood more like the whole concept of like, don't take it personal. There's a problem with this guy, not you, kind of thing. And he understood that. If you ever get the chance to talk to him, he will tell you about this story, what nightmare he went through with this guy. So, but the point is, right? That's a client that was gonna buy a house. The question is, with who? Right? It's with a person that has developed themselves enough that understand where he's coming from. So from what I know about him, is he was adopted. He grew up an orphan, got adopted. He became a doctor, like some type of a surgeon, and then he got a disability through the Navy because he was working in the Navy, and he actually bought houses with me from there on. But that's the thing, right? So that background, that historical he has no father figure. And that's what I've noticed. So based on that, basically, I can understand why he's talking the way he talks. But I don't allow him to talk the way he talks to everybody else. Because remember, you don't talk to your father like that. Right? So that's the idea. You know, and it's in your tonation of your voice, how you express it in such a mature way that the person doesn't get offended. And that's another thing, because we have our ego. All of us have our ego, and the ego sometimes gets the best of us. And in order for you to get the best of others, you have to be able to understand where your ego kicks in. And when I talk to my wife, sometimes I tell her, like, you know, when I'm telling her about, so da da da, and then I catch myself like, you know, that's my ego talking. And you have to be able to see that from a different perspective, because in order for you to be able to influence people, right, you have to be in control of your emotions. You have to be in control of how you speak, what you say, and how you say it, and in such a way that you get the most out of that conversation. If I'm not gonna get anything out of a conversation that's positive, I'd rather not have a conversation. But if I were to have a conversation, right, I look at the end communication part of what the result of that conversation would be. If it's something that's gonna go positive, then yes, I continue the conversation. If it's something that doesn't go positive, I'll walk away from it. Let's have a conversation another time. And you know, that includes my mom, actually. It's the hardest thing. In my whole entire life, I mastered that walking away part politely with my mom and my dad, because I never had an argument with them. I never had to. And my reasoning behind it is they'll always win. So what's the point? Maybe I'm right, but they still win somehow, so I'm not gonna. I've seen my brothers and sisters go through this fight. And like now my dad's 88 years old, my mom is 82 years old, they're still fighting, and I'm like, what is going on with these children? You know, that's exactly what they are. Children, right? You don't have to go through that process. You can choose to walk away from things, because even though your ego is hurt, nobody really cares about your ego but you. Seriously, nobody really cares about your ego but you. So you want to be influential, right? You need to know when to walk off from situations, because otherwise you're going to get a situation where you deposited negatively to people. And people wonder like, oh, how come this person is not doing anything for me? It's because you've dragged them, and their emotional bank account is such negative that they're gonna close the account pretty soon, you know? so you gotta understand that it's very important for you to understand the importance of depositing in order for you to receive things from people. You wanna be influential, then guess what? You need to deposit things, not necessarily monetarily, but emotionally. Whatever it takes to deposit emotionally will create the next level of your career or of your business to grow. Because every person that you meet out there is a potential person that's going to buy a home. And it's interesting because I go into certain parties or events, and when I walk away from there, sometimes I'll walk away with a client or two clients, or someone wants to refer, and then there's another, like one or two other realtors there, and they can't get anything, and they come up and say, hey Mark, how come you're getting this referral? I'm like, well, you gotta work on it. I mean, that's exactly what it is. But in being influential, it's very important, in particular, on how you deliver the message and how that person receives it. You can have the most negative, message, but if you deliver it properly, the person might receive it positively. They can, absolutely, and I've seen it. I've seen a very negative, like message that I have to give to my client or whatever, you know, whatever the situation is. But they receive it positively because I explain it in such a way. And the good book on that is How to Influence People, How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's interesting because you sandwich the positive, the negative in between the two positives. So even though it's really a negative thing you're bringing up, but since you built up enough stuff in the beginning to prep them for that negative stuff, they still feel good about you. And in the end, basically, you actually like sugarcoat it with some positive things.
Yep.
You get your message across, but guess what? They're not mad at you, they're not upset with you, they're even grateful that you even brought that up, because it's the way you delivered that message.
Right.
So it's that important. So looking at it from influence, right? There's a book by Robert Cialdini that I will highly recommend. It's called Influence. That's exactly the name of the book. So if you get a chance to read it, I'm telling you, it was a game changer for me, because I was able to apply some of those things that I've learned from it, and I was able to transform some of the time-consuming things, especially when you're a buyer agent, time-consuming things that you have, and able to kind of move a client along to a direction that they're able to purchase a home in a shorter period of time, and very happy with your services, kind of thing. So, how to sell your listing at top dollar? Well, educate the seller of the type of market we're in. There's not enough stress on that sometimes, that the client doesn't even know that the market has shifted or the market is actually a certain way. And you need to educate them all the way from the beginning where the market is, not by telling them, show them. Show them exactly what's going on in their neighborhood. Involvement is key. If you want to influence somebody, get them involved. Get them be part of the process. If you get them part of the process, then they don't look at you and say, oh, you're trying to steer me a certain way. No, because you're part of the process. You're the one calling the shots. But guess what? This household, this one, I mean, I'm dropping listing, my listing sometimes $25,000 at a time because that's where the next buyer comes in. And if there's not enough showings, how can I sell your home?
Right.
If you're off the mark in the terms of the price, how can we sell your home? We can't. It has to show a certain way for a certain price in order for it to move. So, list the property at the correct price to begin with. I mean, when they say correct price, I mean, if you want to sell the house, for crying out loud, yeah. But if you don't have plans to sell the house and you want to actually use it as an open house to get buyers from, I mean, that's your story, okay? That's not mine. I'm trying to sell my house at the correct price. And if it's not correct, you make the adjustments, but you prep your clients all the way from the beginning. Not as you go through the process, because they don't know what's going on at that point. They're like thinking like, oh, you're just trying to drop the price, so you can sell it for, sell it, but we want the most money. Well, you know what? Let me show you the statistics. Give them statistics. For me, the way I look at it, if you want to keep your listing on a weekly basis, you got to be in touch, talking to your client, your seller on a weekly basis, talking to them on the phone on a weekly basis. If you're not doing that, you would be losing listings. It's just because the importance of communication in the kind of business we're in to be influential, it's critical. So, guide the buyer's agent to the type of offer that could be acceptable to the seller. Remember, if you're a listing agent, you're representing seller, right? If you're able to guide the buyer agent to put a certain offer, which I've done many, many times, why not? If it benefits my client, that's exactly what I'm gonna do. And then indicate a sense of competition and urgency to the buyers when they have a workable offer. Sense of urgency is what drives buyers to move forward. If there's no sense of urgency, they'll just say, oh, I'm not in any hurry. I'm not gonna actually do anything with this. Prepare the seller for a lower price than expected. That's another thing. In the beginning, my clients actually have high expectation what they want their house for, which is normal, right? But I always tell them, hey, listen, we can try that for a week, but if we're not getting any showing in this first week, we're gonna need to drop it on the next buyer level, and if not 2 more weeks doesn't, and then we have to drop it. So sometimes I drop 25, 50,000, 75,000 just so that the property moves, because it has to move in a short period of time, otherwise it sits there. And remember the saying of under promise but over perform. Exactly what I discussed with you earlier. So set expectation at the first meeting. Loyalty, honesty, confidentiality. This is like the basic of our relationship that we should have with our clients to begin with. Prepare them for the process. Get them loan approved before you even show them a single house. Tell them it's part of the process, right? And also, it helps with the negotiations. See, when people are not approved and then you're just getting them approval, it's too late, especially in this market where things move like this, right? So when searching for property, set up a search with them for auto email. So that's exactly what I do when I do my search with them. I try to meet my clients personally because it creates that bonding as much as possible. During COVID, we did a lot of like Zoom meetings and stuff like that. But when I'm doing the search, I try to do the search with them in person or Zoom meeting. And then I set them up right there on an auto email, so then I don't have to do it again. And then I will let them know that, of course, if their search criteria change or they want to add something, that we can add it together. Because you don't want them to feel like things are coming in without their input. Always have their input. If you want your situation to succeed with any buyers that you're working with, make sure that they got their input in it. Okay, and I told you already before, more than 8 houses, no more than 8 houses at a time. I mean, to me actually,
That's a lot.
it is a lot, especially if you have a big inventory.
Yeah, I would say that's extreme.
Yeah.
8
Well, in this
houses
market,
a
you're not
day.
gonna get 8 houses in most cases. And even if you do, more than likely they're gonna write an offer. You want it into a level where they actually feel like they've seen everything. That's how you're gonna get them to make a decision. But if they feel like, oh, it's limited to 3 or 4, oh, I haven't seen everything. But when you're looking at 8, you think it's a lot, but it's really not. It's like 3-4 hours at the most. 3-4 hours to make like 8 to 10 grand, that's not a bad gig. I mean, that's why that's the magic number for me, at least.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Does that make sense? Because it's enough for them to make a decision, right? But it's not too much that you're actually showing 50 houses. And then let them make their own decision, like I told you before. Bash the houses that you don't like. That's how you gain their trust. Which means if you see houses that they don't like to begin with, you know they're not going to buy that house. Look at all the negative things about the house and show it to them, so at least they know that you're on their side. Make sense? This is more like, this is the trust building process. This is where you actually begin the trust building process. That you're willing to tell them the negative as well as the positive, because otherwise you sound like a salesperson, right?
It's a powerful rapport building technique to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a reason why they don't like the house, right? And whatever that reason is legitimate. It's because it's their reason, not yours, right? So if they don't like the patio, let's say, right? Oh, shoot, man, I don't like the patio either. It's because you don't like it. I'm not going to say it's because you don't like it. I don't like the patio, and then I point out exactly why I don't like the patio, just like how they're seeing it. Maybe it's too small. Maybe it's actually like, you don't like the color. Maybe you can already tell what they don't like about the patio. Like you can even ask them, like, what do you like? What do you don't like about the patio? Oh, I don't like the color of the patio. Yeah, you know what? You might be right. It's not my thing either. It's like, that's the thing, and that's how you build that part, because you cannot just always talk about all the great things about each and every house that you see. Then they're like, what? You're just trying to sell me any house? You don't care. I mean, care. Really care. I mean, like, if they already don't like the house and then there's more things wrong with it, point it out. And it's a great way to actually kind of really connect with that person, knowing the fact that you're willing to tell them how things are. Right?
What was your question?
Yeah.
Yeah, the question is when the husband and wife, so the husband is not there, only the wife comes, and then next
Oh, you're in
time-
trouble. Yeah, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's how you lose clients, actually. I've lost clients like that. What, the husband never showed up, and then the husband ended up with another agent. Yeah.
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 I mean, between themselves, they agree on certain things, but they diverge on other things. And it's not easy for you, to please the husband, but not the wife. To please the wife,
Depending
not
on the
husband.
culture, by the way.
Yeah,
Sometimes you actually would, if you know the culture and where they're coming from and what type of culture that is, understand who's in charge of the house.
process.
And if you ignore that person, you're gone.
Oh yeah, you gotta
Yeah.
start with that one.
You gotta understand
and
who.
then include the other person.
Yeah, always
Make them
include
feel
the other
like
person.
they're involved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've had situations where clients have told me they switch agent because, and I was talking to the wife, and the wife said I didn't exist there when I was actually with that agent. Like, never asked me a question, but I'm the one who's actually at home all the time, and I'm the one who's gonna have to live with this house, and then I don't get asked. I don't really. No, make both of them feel important. How much more does it take for you to actually say the right things to the right people to make sure that they feel like they're important? Make them feel important. That's another rule, by the way. So let them make the decision, make them feel important, and don't toot your own horn. Let somebody else do it for you. Okay? That's the 3 rules of real estate that if you were to learn anything from me, that's it. Because when you toot your own horn, they look at you and they're like, oh man, this arrogant B. And
Right.
you come across this way, right? So what I do before I go to a listing appointment, I send my credentials already. I send my presentation already ahead of time before I show up. So when I show up, I just focus on them. You see? Because they've already had time to review my stuff. And I ask them, hey, did you get a chance to review? If they didn't, that's like, okay, we'll sit down later on once you show me exactly what you think about what I need to know about your home. If you notice, it's about them. Always make it about them. Okay? That's the reason why you need to make them feel important. Yeah? And that makes a big difference why people would want to work with you. I never tell my clients, oh, I have another client, that's why I didn't pick up the phone.
Oh.
Or like, oh, I'm too busy right now, you know, call me another time. You know, my email address is, I had this one loan officer's email address, like, busy schedule. I'm like, okay, you got a busy schedule, okay? I don't want to have anything to do with you, you know? And believe me, people do crazy things in this business. But you got to understand, if you want to succeed in this business, people want to be heard. People want to feel important, just like you. Just like you. It's all natural for us to actually attract to people that wants us to be around them. Welcoming. That's one thing about the culture in the Philippines that I've learned over the years, and it's very, very effective. I mean, if you ever talk to Filipinos on the VA level, they say yes sir and ma'am. You notice that? It's very, very common because that's how they talk as part of the culture. We have a certain way to talk to someone, not even older, but someone that they want to respect. There's the thing called opo, like in Spanish, usted, right? There's a certain way that you speak in that particular culture that allows for people to feel important. And it's a very nice feeling when you're actually there because you feel like everybody's like so, you know, welcoming. And that's what you gotta be. You gotta be welcoming to your clients. You know, you can't come across too busy. When a client says, oh, you're too busy. No, I'm never too busy for you. I always would say that because I'm not. I'm there. The reason why I'm in this business is because of you. If you're not doing business with me, I probably won't be doing business because any person that I work with, if they don't feel like that I treat them very well, then they wouldn't want to work with me and I won't have any business. So you're the one who puts the food on my table.
Yeah.
Okay? To that extent, sometimes I tell people, because I want to make sure that they're aware that I care not only about them, I care about the fact that they're important to me. That's very, very important. If you want to be influential, that's one way to actually kind of soften things up so that you, whatever comes out of your mouth, can be heard. People always tell me, it's like, oh, how come this person cannot hear? I told him many, many times, blah, blah, blah. Well, because you're telling them. See, if you step back a little bit and build up something that makes them feel like they can hear you, that they want to listen to you, then they will actually do what you're telling them to do. That's how important this whole influence is all about. So, make the house that they like have more pros than cons than the other houses. Because here's another thing, right? If they already like a house and they've seen other houses, right? And you know this is something that's good for them. If you know this is something that's good for them, right? You don't tell them, oh, this is good for you, you should actually write an offer.
Gotta be genuine.
That's right. But here's the thing, right? Point out the things that could benefit their family. Point out the things that could be nice about the house. People want to hear positive things about what their decision looks like. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, if it's ugly, don't say anything. To me, you know, if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all because you're going to insult the person's taste. Oh, I don't like it. Oh, I love this red color and this, and you're like, oh man, that's so ugly. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, you have to understand where to push and where to pull, right? I mean, I'm not being disingenuous. I just don't want to give my opinion. Mm-hmm. Is that okay? Mm-hmm. It's okay, right? If it doesn't, remember the conversation I was telling you, when I'm having any conversation with anybody, if I see that that conversation is going to go south because of what I'm about to say, mum's the word, quiet. I don't say a single thing. Why? Why ruin a perfectly good relationship that you could have with that person? You see? Because to be honest with you, our opinion is our greatest killer. Our ego is the one that kills us in any business we get into. Believe me, why people fail in their business, why people succeed in their business is because their ego gets in the way. You're your own killer of your own business. Can you imagine that? And if you can actually unload that ego and at least recognize it. Start with the recognition of whether your ego is the one talking or is it really genuinely that's exactly how you would say it because it makes sense. Ask yourself that question when you're talking to people because when I'm talking to people, I already have an inkling of what I sound like on the other side. And there's a certain level of personal development that you develop over the years that you'll understand how important that is. So take home on influence. Always put yourself on the other person's shoes, right? It's exactly what I was telling you. Like, put yourself on the other person. If you're receiving, coming from me, this particular message, right? How am I feeling if I was in your shoes? It's really tricky sometimes because you have to pay attention. You really have to pay attention to exactly what you're saying. Ask the question, if I were them, how would I make decisions and why? Look, if it doesn't make sense to you, more than likely it doesn't make sense to them. So don't try to convince them something that you won't be convinced yourself. You know, like some people telling me like, oh, I got out of the timeshare business because I'm ruining people's lives. Yeah, maybe you are, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of hard to actually be in that business and feel good about it if you actually can feel the other side. You don't want to be sold to on that side. But if you can deal with that, that's your issue. That's your thing. That's your little, I mean, otherwise there won't be any timeshare salespeople, right? If the answer is something that is compelling and you would volunteer to do what your agent suggested. So as an agent, right, if you were my client and I was talking to you about a particular home, right, how would I feel about that home? Always understand where the emotions lie, especially between the couple, if you actually have a couple that you're dealing with, because I have to understand the dynamic on who's doing what. So that's why you need to ask the question. 60 to 70% of your conversation has to be them answering questions and you actually asking the question. The biggest problem all of us run into when we're doing sales is we want to inform our clients everything we know about this business.
Talk, take up space, take up air time, yeah.
Yeah. Unless you're doing this kind of work, motivational speaking, then don't do that. Because I can take up time, right? But then I'm delivering something meaningful, hopefully, to you guys. But to your clients, they don't want to sit here. I mean, seriously. I mean, this is not the business they got into. They're trying to just buy a house for crying out loud, you know? So, yeah. Or are you feeling pushed or pressured to make decisions based on other people's agenda? Agents are guilty of this. In the beginning of my career, I was guilty of this. As a matter of fact, I feel sorry for the people I sold houses to in my first 2-3 years of my business, because those people that I sold houses to, I don't think they actually got a good house because nobody was showing me anything. Nobody was showing me how to be a better agent back then, until I had this mentor or coach that showed me exactly what it takes, and all these clients kept coming back over and over and over. And it's so much easier when you're picking up calls, and on a weekly basis you can ask my wife, she can confirm it, I get about 2 to 3 leads on a weekly basis. I mean, calling me like, hey, I want to buy a house, okay, or I want to sell my property, that kind of thing, or I want to upgrade my house, anything and everything under the sun, I'm getting on a weekly basis. Why? Because I want to be a magnet. I want to be that honey, right? I want to be that honey to those bees that actually they just come, you know. Otherwise, your business, you're always constantly chasing. You don't want to be hunting your clients, okay? You want the clients to want to come to you because you have something of value that you give them, that you provide to them. And how do you bring that value? Let's start with an emotional value. If they feel good about you, they will call you. If they feel like you're a jerk, then they will never call you. Or they'll call you to actually curse at you. Okay? I mean, whatever it is. But all I'm saying is, just make sure that every person that you encounter, because every person that you have out there could be a client. When the market crashed in 2008, 2009, 2010, right? I don't know if any of you guys were in the business then. When the market crashed, I had 8 agents refer me 12 listings.
Mm-hmm.
And I had agents calling me and saying, Mark, I don't do short sales, too much time for me. Can you send me just a referral fee? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
All
and
day
I was
long.
like, sell.
All day long.
But back then
All
nobody
day
wanted to
long.
do it. I swear, because nobody knew how to do it. And I was doing short sales in 2006 when there was hardly any short sales. And when I was doing taxes in 1998 as an accountant, I was actually doing this forgiven debt on a short sale. So I knew exactly how those things work, and I started doing business on the short sale side rather than on the foreclosure side. because I didn't feel like there was value to actually kicking people out of their homes when they foreclose on their property, even though the bank is telling you so. I didn't feel good about that, not until they did the cash for keys. Then I got into the foreclosure business, because now I'm bringing something positive, you know. But you knock on the door, it's like, hey, sheriff is gonna be in a week, okay? I need you guys out, you know. And nowadays, back then in 2009, 2010, when they shifted into cash for keys, I knock on the doors like, hey, this checks could look like this. If you move out at a certain date and clean it up, you don't have to be evicted. And look, you're gonna get cash, $4,000 or $10,000, whatever amount the bank is offering. So that's the way I look at it. There's certain core values that I work with in my business, and if it doesn't align with my core values, there's many ways to do business. There's property management. Right now, there's actually, actually foreclosures starting to come up again. You have like short sales. You got, oh, by the way, loan modifications. I don't do loan modifications, but I know how that whole thing works. Guess what? I just sit down with my clients like, okay, well, let me help you with that. But you have to do it yourself, not me. I don't have anything to do with it, but I know much about it, so maybe I could just be a friend and sit right next to you and show you how it's done. And guess what? 86 families in 2008 to 2012 or 13. 86 families, I did the loan modification for free. When I say I did, is I actually had them do it, but I just actually guide them through it so it can help them. So they kept their house. You know those 86 families today, they're still referring business to me. You see how important it is to actually plant that seed of positive emotion? That's how you influence people. See, there's ways to influence people. And the easiest way to influence people is when people feel good about you. Being around you, being, having a relationship with you, that kind of thing. So I treat everybody nice, even on the road. When somebody's like being a jerk and middle finger, like, hey, sorry. All those things, because you just don't know. What if that's your next client? you show up on their doorstep, they're like, oh, I have a listing appointment here. Yeah, were you the one who just cut me off and gave me a middle finger? I mean, I've had a situation one time, when I was doing recruiting for a company, and I was interviewing all these people, and there was somebody actually coming in the door and like slammed the door instead of going upstairs. And turns out I'm interviewing for a job, and I'm like sitting there like, okay, so I know this character, I know this personality. I mean, I don't know. I mean, is it gonna be good for the clients that I'm working with? Maybe, because they're showing characteristics of how they can present themselves in front of me. But then, for a complete stranger, when I was a complete stranger, they're treating me this way, right? So you have to understand the importance of being able to kind of work your way through the process of influencing people through the emotional side of deposits that you'll actually put in. And it's much, much easier. Even on your relationships. I mean, the best relationship that I ever had is not because I met the most beautiful person in the world. No, it's also because I've actually changed as a person. And with me being a different person than I was back then, now I can recognize the limitations and things so with your buyers and with your sellers, when you're dealing with your buyers and sellers, right, it's the same idea. You need to change if you're not getting enough listing conversion from your appointments, because there's something that you're not connecting with that client with. Okay? So that's it. Oh, that's my marketing that I do sometimes.
Thank you.
All right.
Very good.